Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hope you're doing well. So, let's continue this radical feminist book by a nut job named Larry Penny. Now, the reason why I had to put the title the way I did is look at the freaking title of this book. This is a story about how modern masculinity is killing the world and how feminism can save it. It's a story about sexual power and trauma, resistance and persistence. And at the heart of that story is one simple idea. We are in the middle of a sexual revolution. Modern fascism and the feminists fight back. Okay, I know men make jokes about how us women sometimes can't get to the point. I explain things, and my husband sometimes is like, yeah, get to the point. So I get the trope, alright? Because sometimes women will say things like, so there I was, and then this, and that. And men will be like, hey, did you do this, blah, blah, blah. Like, they're very concise men, right? But this title is like, well. But, interestingly, because of this wacky title, the book stood out and was actually what I was looking for so that we can study our enemy. If we don't study our enemy, and our enemy is studying us, we are at a disadvantage. Okay? So let's continue upon that path and get your popcorn ready. She continues. The best way to correct power imbalances in society is for the weaker players to organize collectively. So she wants the sexual deviants and the hypersexual women to collectivize against heterosexual men and the patriarchy and the nuclear family. Remember, on page 4, she said, they undermine the authority of institutions from the wage workplace to the nuclear family. This sexual revolution is, by its very nature, a threat to heterosexuality and male supremacy. She ain't playing. When women come together to argue, for example, for change in the way rape is prosecuted, that is collective bargaining. Now, that's a dirty way to frame it. Okay. We want the truth to be had. And it is scary if you have sons who are handsome and they get with one of these whack job women and she falsely accuses him. I mean, that's pretty scary that they could just lock your boy away. Think about it. There are some psychopathic women. Yet, we want the monsters to be chained in prison for as long as possible for the crimes they committed. But we must be careful. It's such a delicate path. We must tell our boys to be very careful with the women they are even around. And Islam has a solution. Gender segregation. Lowering your gaze. Get married. Protect your private parts. Just stay away. Think of Prophet Yusuf, may Allah be pleased with him. How he turned away from the woman and didn't commit adultery. Well, he wasn't married, but she was, right? So he didn't commit fornication, and he didn't allow the fear of Allah to go away. He kept the fear of Allah, and he was good. And he was put in jail for that. He's innocent. The vindictiveness of that woman is a good example of how men gotta be careful. You gotta be careful, man. When women begin to share stories of sexual harassment at work and to demand that there be stronger consequences for abusive employers, that I agree with. However, women gotta stop being sexual as well. I, in the restaurant industry, would see gay men constantly talking about sex. They'd pinch the cooks' butts. They'd get a towel and flick it and smack the cooks' butts, and they were allowed to do it because they were gay. And the managers felt very uncomfortable to tell the gay person to stop doing that because it would be seen as homophobic. But it is fascinating how a lot of women will get mad at a dress code or that they can't be very sexual at work. I mean, in the restaurant industry, the girls who show cleavage, bend over and let their thong show. Who flirt with customers, who flirt with the manager, they get the better table sections. There's a dynamic there that women do weaponize and utilize. So if you're gonna bait the men, you should have equal punishment. You should be fired automatically. Women should not be allowed to sexually harass men, should not be allowed to touch them, say a joke. I mean, I've heard women, I've never not had a job where I didn't hear women saying a sexual joke or being just as nasty as the dudes. But the men are expected to just suck it up and endure it and watch out or get reported, right? It's just a mess. So here, clearly, yes, we want no sexual harassment in the workplace. But notice how she's just blaming the men and not holding the women accountable. That's not going to solve nothing, right? That is collective bargaining. When people who can become pregnant, sorry, only women get pregnant. Females. Understand? Idiot. Taking away our motherhood. People become pregnant. Chest feeders. It's called breastfeeding. We're mothers, not birthing person. Morons. Decide not to do so until the material conditions of parenthood improve. That is to collective bargaining. Material conditions of parenthood improve. Fancy way to say kill your kid if you're poor. Hey, poor people, you don't have a right to have kids because your material conditions aren't sublime. Man, there was women having 10 kids and they didn't have 2 nickels to rub between them, but they had love, family, support, and cherished memories. Plenty of rich people have like 1 or no kids. Not everyone can be rich, so you're trying to be eugenicists and tell us that if we don't want to be in the rat race, we somehow don't have a right to reproduce and our babies deserve to be aborted? See, in religion, in Islam, we can give women hope. Allah tells us in the Quran, don't kill your children out of fear of poverty. Right? The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, helped people to stop burying their daughters. It's very important to know that it's okay to be a mother who has simple means. You don't have to be living in a mansion with Gucci bags in order to be a mom. Rather, we should help women see that there is something good and noble about having a struggle of a poor mother. It makes this life a test. I'm not rich. I don't care to be rich. But what I have in wealth, in terms of being able to stay home, to cook, to have organic food, to breathe fresh air by the ocean, the wealth is measured not just in fiat currency. Gratitude brings wealth, and this person clearly doesn't see that. Watch out for that. Watch out for the brainwashing of a atheistic feminist who serves the occultic agenda, who is mincing words here and is telling women, yeah, go be a sexual deviant. Or in her words, empowered. But don't have kids if you're poor. Think about that. That too is collective bargaining. That's what this sexual revolution is all about. So the sexual revolution, according to her, is about not getting pregnant until you're wealthy. Eugenics programs. What a monster. A huge monster. You can't have a sexual revolution without addressing sexual violence. For the same reason that you can't have an economic revolution without addressing workers' rights. Okay. She's advocating the sex industry, which literally is one of the most violent industries for women. Violent in terms of the mental scarring, but also in the depravity that they must endure to get that mighty dollar that they worship. And by the type of men they will encounter who have very, very dark souls, and the women, the pimptresses, who will also feed off of them like vampires until they're ready to be cast aside like Tuesday's newspaper. She advocates for hedonism, breaking up the nuclear family, breaking up the patriarchy. The patriarchy helps bad young men to fear a noble, righteous father or brothers coming to hold him accountable for what he did to their family member. Men protecting women is a good thing. Very good thing. She hates it. For the same reason that you can't have an economic revolution without addressing workers' rights, a sexual revolution that simply makes sex easier to access for people who have more power is in no way radical. What? Make sex easier to access. In Oakland, they put up some barriers to try to stop the nasty sex workers from parading themselves around family homes. And this made me realize, I'll share a screenshot of it eventually, but it just made me realize how there's going to be a lot of good women who are territorial over their husbands. You don't want to be eating dinner and then seeing a stripper, hooker, prostitute out by your front yard in a thong and high heels, getting in a car with some stranger. And your daughter's like, what's she doing, mommy? And your son, and then having that kind of temptation around your husband. It's not healthy. It's not good. Sex should not be easier to access. You know how it's easy to access? By getting married. By getting married and staying married. For people who have more power is in no way radical. In fact, any sort of revolution that preaches liberation while leaving the rich and powerful free to exploit, bully, and abuse will inevitably begin to rot in the damp heat of its own contradictions. Sorry, but in the sexual revolution, who got the money is going to have the most power. That's just how it's going to be. And if you think for 2 seconds that if there wasn't some lesbian who's a millionaire, that she's not going to have fun by going from this woman to that woman to that woman, I'd say you're gladly mistaken. You don't want that. Easier doesn't mean better. It's good when a man has to strive to get a woman, and when a woman doesn't give it up so easily. There's dignity and refinement in that. But if a woman's just like, hey, yeah, I just met you, let's go, and then she gets syphilis, it's like, was it worth it? No. This sexual revolution is different. This sexual revolution goes deeper because it deals not just with sexual license, look at that terminology, but with sexual liberation. So we got 2 terms here, sexual life and sexual liberation. It is not just about freedom from, but freedom to. It is a fundamental reimaging of gender roles. See that? You see that? They want to twist the gender roles. It's not a conspiracy. They want to... So when people say that these feminists want to make men feminine and make women dictatorial, they're not joking. It's not conspiratorial. It's literally in the literature. Because when you reimagine gender roles, what does that mean? Women going to work, the man staying home. They're not talking about a healthy dynamic of helping each other with the housework and the farm work and with the bills or something like that. They're not talking about healthy mental support. They're talking about who gets to pull all the strings, who gets to make the heavy decisions. And she's not acknowledging how there are many women who don't want to always be the decision maker, and that the women who always want to be the decision maker are usually very unbearable, and the men are very miserable. there's a give and take. This is why it's very important for us to have healthy Islamic marriage advice. Because with these people, it literally said in the book that they're going after the nuclear family and straight men and the patriarchy. So their gender role disruption is a problem. And sexual roles. I mean, disgusting. Work and love, trauma and violence, pleasure and power. See, pleasure. Why does it have to be pleasure always linked up with sex? Why can't it be pleasure in the sunset? Pleasure in hearing the sounds of the birds in the morning. It's always pleasure in terms of lust, indulgence, of decadence, pomp, vanity, sin, degradation. That's what they mean by pleasure. Nastiness. And that kind of pleasure, when you're like 50 and you're acting like Madonna's old as dirt. And she still thinks she's like some type of fetish. And she paid for all this plastic surgery, right? Look at her face. You see what it does when you live in the BDSM, occultic, lust, demon realm. It's not a healthy, vibrant, energy-giving path. It's just not. There are sexual rules. Allah has set them down for us. Keep it within the confines of your marriage. Deal with each other with justice. The new sexual revolution is a feminist one, and the most important thing to realize about this sexual revolution is that it is already happening. Yeah, believe me, woman, we know it's happening. So, if we want to counteract this, we need Islamic counselors, we need healthy, non-red pill marriage advice. We want to give people advice on how to stay married and how to make happy marriages. Alright, baby's up from her nap. We're at 17 minutes. Let me know what you think, and if you'd like to join my blog, it's www.subscribestar.com/MilahanArchive. Hope to see you there.